Hello and welcome to another video from me, and this time we're looking at the AQA topic conflict and tension and the First World War topic, and we're looking at why was there a stalemate on the Western Front. So we're going to look at those big battles and try and do a big 16 marker. Okay, so we've got a challenging lesson ahead, looking at the reasons for stalemate and developing a 16 marker answer. So recap your knowledge, have a look through your revision guide and think about those major battles that are taking place on the Western Front and all the other aspects that may be leading to stalemate, maybe weapons and the challenges faced in trenches. And then come back to me when you're ready and we'll go through a quiz to see what you know and how well you know it. And then here is the quiz. So 8 questions. We're going to look at lots of different battles, lots of different things going on and recap your knowledge. So pause, see what you can answer by yourself. And if you get stuck with anything, have a look through your revision notes and do some good revision and come back to me when you're ready. Okay, so here are the answers then. So list 4 battles on the land and sea in 1916. So we've got Somme, Verdun, Jutland, Brusilov in the east. So you might have looked to your wider world page to find that. Passchendaele's not in 1916. Name 3 leaders of the big battles on land and sea. So you've got Haig at the Somme, you've got von Falkenhayn, Verdun, which was German, and Pétain, the French leader of Verdun. We've got Brusilov in Russia, who led the Brusilov offensive. Give 2 ways that the British tried to improve tactics during the Battle of the Somme. So using tanks and also the creeping barrage. So it's not all a disaster, although it was pretty disastrous. There were some things learnt by the Somme. Who was behind the plan to attack Turkey at Gallipoli? So Winston Churchill, First Lord of the Admiralty, future Prime Minister during the Second World War. Give 2 examples of bad luck impacted the big battles. So tanks broke down during the battles, had technical problems at the Somme. The bad weather at Passchendaele, I have put the dates 1915 to 17 there. List 2 ways that technology meant defensive tactics were stronger than attacking tactics during these battles. So machine guns could stop infantry and cavalry charges. So a lack of an attacking weapon, meant defenses were strong. Infantry rifles could kill at 200 yards or even more now. So you couldn't just stand to attention somewhere waiting to attack. You would get shot. So you had to be hiding in trenches from these deadly weapons. Of course, barbed wire stopped cavalry charges and infantry as well. So those are the few technological changes that made defences stronger than attacks. Then the Battle of 1916 that saw a large victory of the Russians over the Austro-Hungarians, so the Brusilov offensive. And then the Battle of 1917 that almost knocked Italy out of the war, the Battle of Caporetto, where the Germans almost destroyed Italy. Okay, so let's have a think about a question now. Okay, so we've got the poor tactics generals was the main reason for the stalemate in the war in the years 1915 to 1917. How far do you agree with this statement? Okay, so it's a big 16 marker. What do you think is required to be successful in this big 16 marker? So we've done this type of activity before lots, where we think about the command words in the question and we start to note down what skills we need to do. So list the skills you think you need to show to be successful. So pause me and just interpret the question for a minute or 2. What do you think you need to do to be successful? Okay, got some ideas? Well, hopefully you started off with the fact it's 16 marks. You need to make sure you do 3 paragraphs. One's going to be on the poor tactics of the generals, and we need 2 other themes to talk about. And if you've been with me for other videos, we'll know we do P and Peel paragraphs. So we need to do those. When we're doing our evidence in our Peel paragraphs, good factual examples are essential to back up our points. We explain the impact of the examples. We say this led to stalemate because, and we explain with knowledge. We might want to be balanced. So if we're talking about the poor tactics of generals, we might say, yes, it led to stalemate, but we might say, oh, however, actually, it wasn't entirely them leading to stalemate. We might look at some strengths, some successes, maybe. We might explain widely, particularly when we're evaluating and giving balance, okay, and look at different people and places. Again, we might evaluate, so we might say, however, actually the general's tactics were pretty decent, and give some credit where credit is due and be evaluative. And of course, we need to conclude at the end. So hopefully that all makes sense. So now let's plan our answer to the question. So we've got the poor tactics of generals is given to us already. Okay, so what do you think could be 2 other topics? Have a think for a moment. You can pause me while you think about it, look through your vision guide, think about it. Okay, so what about these then? Got some ideas? What about changing technology and bad luck? So the quiz sort of did hint you towards those ideas, and obviously that you can sort of connect examples into those things as well. Okay, so what would be examples for each of these? Now think about the examples and things you might talk about. So pause me again, start to list your ideas in your plan. Okay, so you paused, got some ideas? So here we are then. So poor tactics generals. There were large artillery bombardments that failed to break the barbed wire. Germans just sat in their dugouts, perfectly safe. The infantry would walk across no man's land and were basically shot by machine guns with huge casualty figures. However, generals did begin to experiment with new technology like the Mark I tank at the Somme. Okay, what about changing technology? Well, the machine gun and rifle made old tactics useless, of course, very difficult. And the generals were all trained on cavalry charges and things like that. They didn't know necessarily what to do straight away. Barbed wire also stopped cavalry and infantry attacks, and it funneled them towards machine gun points at the fire bays. So again, the defense tactics were hugely superior to the attacking tactics. However, new technology like tanks and aircraft helped to make a mobile warfare in some respects. So chain technology also helped. Bad luck. Obviously, weather was a problem. At Passchendaele, the rain made movement impossible. Literally, the soldiers carried planks across no man's land to try and get across the puddles. At Gallipoli, they hit problems with disease and lack of supplies when the supply ships were having trouble, and 80% of soldiers became ill and they had to abandon the conflict. So we have some ideas there about three themes. Okay, and it's nice we looked widely across some different ideas. We've got Gallipoli there, we've got Passchendaele, and it's not just the Somme we're talking about here. We've got to cover those dates 15 to 17. So thinking about different ideas. So how do we write this then? So we use our Peel structure. So our first paragraph should respond to the question. The poor tactics generals were partly or very important reason for stalemate in the war because, okay, we give an example to back up our reason. We then explain how this led to stalemate. And if we think it's very important, we're going to give a further explanation. If we think it's not so important, we might say however, and give maybe a weakness of the argument. Maybe the generals were good at their jobs. Okay, or there was mitigating circumstances. Okay, so how would you start this? You have a think now. We had some ideas in our plan about the poor tactics of the generals. What do you think could be a good opening sentence then? So write your opening sentence now in your revision guide. What do you think is going to be a good opening sentence? Okay, got an idea? So here we are. Here's what I've gone for. And self-assess based on this. The main thing is, have you got a reason after the word because? So the poor tactics of the generals was a partly important reason for stalemate in the war because the tactics led to a war of attrition and could not break through the trenches. So I've only gone partly. I don't think it's so important as other factors. Okay, but obviously their tactics meant when there was a war of attrition. Okay, just people dying and death and despair. So what backs this up, that there was a war of attrition and no breakthrough? So have a think to your notes. Can you back it up with an example? So pause and give an example to back this up. Okay, so here we are. For example, Haig's tactics at Somme included an 8-day bombardment to try and break through the barbed wire, and then the infantry would march across no man's land. Okay, so this meant the tactics of the general led to stalemate because, so we need to explain the impact of this then. So what's the impact of at the Somme of just the infantry walking across no man's land? Maybe you've got a different example. Explain the impact of that, how it led to stalemate. Okay, pause and give it a go. Okay, so here's my idea. Obviously, explain the Battle of Somme. I am in my answer. So this meant the tactics of the general led to stalemate because the artillery could not break the barbed wire and did not destroy the enemy defences due to their strong dugouts. This led to a massive casualties of over 600,000 at the Somme and a battle of attrition that only took 8 kilometres of land. Therefore, a stalemate continued and not a war of mobility. However, the generals did try to break the stalemate. So I've gone for a however here because I didn't think it was so important. I thought it was less important. So I've gone for a however. You might have gone that it's very important and a furthermore. Okay, but if we're going for a however, what are the mitigating circumstances? What are the things they tried to do to make it better, or is there excuses we can give them? Okay, so pause and give your answer a go. And here's mine. Okay, so they did try new tactics. For instance, at the Somme, Haig used the Mark I tank to try and break through trenches. By 1917, the Mark IV tank was a success at Cambrai, taking 8 kilometers of land in one day. At the Somme, also Haig tried the creeping barrage to protect the infantry as they marched across no man's land, although it did not lead to a breakthrough. So we are explaining the other side of the coin. They are trying not to have a stalemate. It's not what they want. Okay, although you could say that actually at Verdun, Folgenheim did want a stalemate, which would be a very interesting answer to give, because he wanted a war of attrition to ground down the French and turn them white, I think was his phrase about it. So now we've got another paragraph. What about new technology? So write your paragraph now. I'm not going to talk you through a bit at a time. I'm going to show you an example in a minute. Take 5 or 6 minutes to write a paragraph. This essay is 16 marks. It should take you 24 minutes to write it. Okay, if you do the maths on the exam, it's amount of marks plus half if you're a normal time student. So therefore, you should spend about 6-7 minutes on a paragraph. Okay, and then have a conclusion. Okay, so time yourself, give yourself that time to write a paragraph. Okay, over to you. Okay, got your answer. So here's what I've done. So, however, the new tactics of war was a very important reason for stalemate in the war, because it led to the end of old tactics and it led to the huge casualties. So, for example, the machine gun and rifles could cause huge numbers of casualties. And obviously, this new technology led to stalemate because the enemy could not advance by marching across the battlefield as before the First World War. This was shown in the Battle of Mons and the Battle of Marne, where 100,000 professional British soldiers stopped a huge army of hundreds of thousands of Germans with simply rifles and machine guns. Therefore, after the Battle of Marne, the German army had to dig in to protect themselves from further casualties. And obviously, you could link that maybe to 1915. I've probably done a bad job there by using 1914. It needs to connect to 1915 there. Okay, so furthermore, inventions like the barbed wire stopped infantry and cavalry charges. This meant that mobile warfare of cavalry charges were at an end, and infantry soldiers could not attack easily. This led to a stalemate in battles like Verdun. Somme and Passchendaele relied on infantry charges that were not effective. Okay, so have a look at your answer. Have you given a nice, clear view? Have you given evidence to back it up? Have you explained with some content of the events? Have you obviously given a range and maybe a furthermore or however that is well explained as well? Then finally, we've got bad luck. Okay, possibly maybe a little bit of a less important one, but again, it's a nice argument you can make. Okay, so away you go. 5 or 6 minutes, write your idea. If you've got something totally different you want to experiment with, go for that one as well. Okay, 5 or 6 minutes, away you go. So here's my answer then. So finally, bad luck was a partly important reason, but a somewhat important reason for stalemate in the war, because it meant poor weather and conditions made attacks difficult. For example, the Battle of Passchendaele was the wettest battle of the war and huge amounts of rain took place. This meant bad luck led to stalemate because the British army could not progress forward easily on a battlefield. Infantry soldiers had to carry planks of wood to walk across the wet battlefield, and tanks could not work effectively as they become stuck in the mud. However, some bad luck was due to the bad planning of generals, as they did not provide food and clean water in some battles. For example, at Gallipoli, over 80% of soldiers became ill due to waterborne diseases. This led to stalemate as the soldiers could not fight effectively due to illness and could not take any land to begin a mobile war on the Gallipoli Peninsula. Okay, so there we are. That's 2 paragraphs. Hopefully you've got similar ideas. You've been using your knowledge really effectively. You feel like you've created a good argument. It flows nicely. Okay, and you're supporting your point at the top. Then finally, a conclusion. So make sure your conclusion gives, obviously, firstly, a reference to the poor tactics generals, first of all. How much do you agree? And then it's a simple explanation of why that is. And then maybe give your final view. If it's not the poor tactics generals, what was it and why? And give your idea. It just needs to be a few sentences to sum up the idea. So I've said, obviously, poor tactics generals were only partly a cause of their plans failed to create a breakthrough, although by 1917 tanks began to be accessed. New weapons had destroyed the plans of generals and was far more important at this time. The generals needed time to adapt to the new weapons, and obviously bad luck was somewhat important, but it was clearly the new weaponry that led to stalemate to try and protect lives. Okay, well, I hope you were successful in your answer and you got lots of the skills and lots of the knowledge. So keep working through the revision guide, and I'll see you again shortly for another video. Okay, bye-bye for now.